Hello, my name is Jasmine Swanson, and this is my magazine analysis. The magazine that I chose for this analysis was Facing the Future by athleticsweekly.com. In this image, you can see on the left-hand side, it goes over the major topics, and then in the middle we have the pictures of the athletes, which really depicts what this magazine will be about. So the major topics are debates about transgender athletes, barriers that women are facing now, changes for female coaches and the struggles they go through, and the athletes aim to end African culture of violence towards their women. The targeted demographics are women, athletes, coaches, I would say the transgender community in general, but if we're going into specifics, I would say the athletes. And then African Americans, but more so the women. And now we're going to go into the 5 sociological concepts regarding transgender athletes. And this goes more so into how female athletes feel a sense, how would you say it? They feel as if it is not necessarily fair to them when they bring, transgender athletes, biological men who turn into women, into this, because the thing that is impossible to change in this scenario is the biological factors of it. The concept that gets brought up a lot in these debates is that biologically men are stronger, faster, and have more stamina. So that's really just a big concept of what goes into this and how ascribed status can be brought out from that. For my second concept that I brought in, I did privilege, which is unearned advantage accorded to members of dominant social groups, people who are male, white, heterosexual, physically able, etc. And the page of the magazine that I chose for this was the one regarding female coaches and the changes happening in their work field. And in this one, this coach, she talks about how it's more difficult for her as a woman to be in a more male-dominated field. And she goes into, one example she brought up was how when she puts in her opinion that kind of contradicts what, say, a male coach thinks, she gets looks, she gets essentially torn down from what she said, compared to a male when they bring in their own input that contradicts another male coach and their opinion. It doesn't really get brought down. So she was really bringing in how there is a sense of privilege when it comes to both the divide of men and women in this field, and how she faces that every day, but also puts in the work to essentially bring it down and to really stand her ground towards it. And this also can bring up misogyny as the third concept, which is an ingrained prejudice against women, dislike, contempt, or hatred of women. And this is really essential in this page because women are seen as their opinions don't matter, and they're seen as inferior to men in sports. So this is a very big concept in athletics, not just for athletes, but for the coaches, because the coaches, I feel, are not brought up as much when it comes to these type of situations. So that was a really big one. Now for my last slide, I have my last 2 concepts, which is intersectionality, which is a concept that identifies how different categories of inequality, such as race, class, gender, etc., intersect to shape the lives of individuals and groups. And my 5th concept is miscegenation, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, which is romantic, sexual, or marital group relationships between people of different races. And the reason I chose these two concepts for this page of the magazine is because it goes into a story about how an African American woman was killed by her husband, and it has to do a lot with, in a sense, their cultural norms. And for this, it goes into interviews where these athletes ask their mothers, and their mothers will tell them it's just a normal thing in their culture. And their norm is that men are to punish their wives when they're out of place or just not acting in a way that they quote unquote should. And by that, punishment would be hitting or any type of abuse, which is not okay. But this magazine page really goes into these concepts, I would think, because intersectionality has been brought into an example in the textbook where different races or different cultures have different standards, or in a sense teachings for gender norms. In a sense, one of the examples was that certain parents that are coming from a certain race or culture would teach their sons a certain thing. For example, how to act in certain interactions, how to put themselves in the work field, or even how to promote themselves. While they would teach the daughters how to be more ladylike, how to put themselves together, and how to essentially act in certain situations, and how they are responsible for the outcomes of those situations. So I really think that can go into what this magazine page is really depicting, because it's more so going into what each gender is taught and how that brings into the norms of what shapes their lives and what their normal is. And for the fifth concept, it really is kind of the same thing, except it's more into relationships. And with this marital relationship, they have different rules, different normalities. And those are my 5 sociological concepts. These were all taken from the textbook. And yes.